Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on any of the issues that are on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll proceed to docket approval. Is there a motion? I have a motion by Councilmember Myers to approve the docket. Do I have a second by Councilmember James? I understand there are some public hearings that need to be addressed or decided upon.
There are zone changes, and then they're on page 3 and 4 of your work session agenda, starting with number 15.
And Mr. Simpson, do I understand correctly, you're here on item 17?
I am, yes.
Ms. Wiseman, 17 as well. All right, let's deal with 15 and 16. Are there motions about 15 or 16?
Mayor, I'll move to put 15 on the docket without a public hearing.
Is there a second? Motion is to amend the docket to put item 15 on without a hearing. Any discussion? Those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any others? Councilmember Lane.
It's JFG Enterprises 2008-20, and I'd like to put that on for hearing without, on the docket without a hearing. So moved.
Which one is that? What?
That was number 15? Yeah. Is that,
Okay, well, there's two JFG Enterprises. I believe the other one was...
8. Okay. So the motion is to put number 18 on without a hearing, correct?
Right. Both of those items would be on without hearing.
And I have a second with Councilmember Gordon. Any discussion on putting 18 on without a hearing? I see none. Those in favor of amending the docket to put item 18 on without a hearing, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. And is there a motion with regard to item 16? I have a motion by Councilmember Stinnett and second by Councilmember Gordon to put item 16 on without a hearing. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. And that takes us down now to item 17. Mr. Simpson and Ms. Wiseman both wish to speak to that issue. So, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, Bruce Simpson. I'm here today representing the Stringer family and the Porter family. There's some other folks from other neighborhoods here. In relation to item 17, we would like to request a public hearing on this zone change. I've talked with Ms. Wiseman and Mr. Lear. We're in agreement for October 28th, if that suits the council. That would start at 6 o'clock.
The request is to amend the docket to schedule a public hearing on item 17 on October 28th at 6 p.m. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilmember Blevins and a second by Councilmember Beard to amend the docket to schedule a hearing on item 17, October 28th at 6 p.m. Any discussion? All in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That being completed, I think we're ready to consider the docket as now amended. Any further discussion? Councilmember Lane?
Excuse me, I'd like to add to the docket for Thursday, September 18, 2008, a resolution authorizing and directing the Department of Law on behalf of the Irvine County government to accept a deed from Lynn D. Williams and James R. Williams and Ball Homes, LLC, for a temporary construction easement and a permanent sanitary sewer easement at 4037 and 40401 Whitewater Drive, and authorizing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to execute the deed of easement at no cost to the Urban County government. So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Lane, second by Councilmember Myers to add that item for us to accept an easement or to obtain an easement. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right. Those in favor of amending the docket to include that item, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Councilmember Stevens.
I've had a request from the law department and the Commissioner of Public Safety to put on the docket a resolution authorizing you and directing and approving the collective bargaining agreement with the police. And I understand there'll be a presentation on this, and it might be more appropriate to save that motion until that time is done, until the presentation is made.
All right. And that might be wise. Everybody can have a little background information on that.
Yes. We were
All right.
supposed to have a handout, which is coming, as I understand it.
Then let's,
Oh, it just came.
all right. Well, let's give everybody a little time to digest that. We can take that up a little later on in the meeting.
So I would make that motion, then I would make a move to table it until after we have a collection.
We'll pick it up later. Anything further with regard to the docket? We have a motion to approve it as amended now on the floor. Those in favor of approving the docket as amended, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is approval of the summary. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Councilmember Gordon has moved and Councilmember Myers has seconded that we approve the summary. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Budget amendments?
I'll move approval, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Blevins for the motion and Councilmember Stinnett for the second. Any discussion? Councilmember Blevins.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question on the item regarding $150,000 in the solid waste division. Is Mr. Feast or Commissioner Taylor here? There he is.
Yes.
You aware of the one I'm talking about?
Yes.
Could you give us some background on what's going on there, please?
Yes, we've had a good number of unanticipated repairs that needed to be done out there. We had a eddy current separator that went down. It's about $40,000, and there was a glass grinder that went down, and so we wanted to make sure that we had enough funds in this year's budget. This is fairly early in the fiscal year. We wanted to make sure we can get the rest of the way through this fiscal year, so that we were able to be ready for any changeovers with the new equipment.
So have you already exhausted your repair budget for this year
Yes.
with these unexpected
Yeah, it's down to about
expenditures?
$10,000, and we've got some more repairs that are going to have to be done.
Okay, that's all I had, Mayor. Thanks.
Any further questions or discussion? Those in favor then of approving the budget amendments, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Budget amendments are adopted. Our next agenda item are the new business items.
Second.
Councilmember DeCamps moved and Councilmember Gordon has seconded a motion to approve the new business items. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. On item B on page 2 of the packet, I was asked to make the correction that this was an item brought forward by Allen and Helm. So the word "co" should be deleted and Helm should replace it. So that's a correction. So moved.
All right. Second. Please. All right. Have a motion and second to make that amendment. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Any further discussion on the new business items? Then those in favor of approving the new business items as amended, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. All right. Our next item is a report from the Stormwater Oversight Committee. Councilmember Gordon.
Do we want to do services first, Mayor?
Well, I brought the docket I received last week, and it doesn't have the Services Committee on here, but Councilmember Ellinger?
Thank you,
I'll
Mayor.
let you go from
The Services Committee met September 9th, and the one item that was on the agenda was the smoking ban issue, and we met with Mike Sainer with the Law Department, also Peggy Miller, who's attorney with Greenbaum, Dahl, and McDonald, and they spoke to us about the different issues and the changes that are going to be occurring from the smoking ban. There were many questions that were asked about that, and then Ellen Hahn from the UK College of Nursing spoke and did a presentation on the committee regarding smoke-free workplaces. And after our discussion, there were some questions that we wanted to have addressed by the Law Department, and they were going to come back at our next meeting to address, and that's on the page 4 of your summary, that asked the attorneys to address issues of taxi enforcement. We looked at that as a possibility. Clarification on dwelling, definitions of public, and the issue of removing open or closed at the next meeting. They also stated if there's anyone that were opposed, that they should come to the next meeting as well. We also talked about having a public meeting in October, and we'll probably have to reschedule, or we'll have to schedule a meeting for the Service Committee because there is no meeting set at this point for November to finalize the smoking ban issue. And then the next issue that we dealt with was an item in committee, and Mr. DeCamp brought a motion forward to table the news rack ordinance until it is determined the self-imposed enforcement by publishers is successful. If not, the issue can be brought back off the table. It was seconded by Councilmember Beard and passed without dissent. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ellinger and a second by Councilmember Crosby. Any discussion? Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor. We adjourned at 2:36.
Thank you. Now, Councilmember Gordon and the Stormwater Oversight Committee report.
Thank you, Mayor. The Stormwater Oversight Committee met on August the 26th, and we have a couple of motions which came out of that committee meeting. Council members will recall that two ladies, citizens, came to us about a flooding issue related to the Tates Creek Presbyterian Church. And the Stormwater Oversight Committee directed the city engineer to investigate this issue and to see if any notices of violation were in order, and to report back to the committee via a written report to the chair. And I received that report, and council members, you should have all received a copy of this report. In it, the Division of Engineering did acknowledge fault in not requesting an amended development plan and necessary documentation. And as a result of that issue, there is a motion to come out of the Stormwater Oversight Committee, and the motion is to ask the two internal audit council representatives, I believe that's Councilmember Stevens and Councilmember Myers, to ask that the internal auditor review this issue as well as the Division of Engineering. And I'm bringing that forward as the first motion.
Is there a second? I have a motion by Councilmember Gordon, second by Councilmember Blevins. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
The other issue that I just wanted to give an update about is that the Stormwater Oversight Committee and the Sanitary Sewer Oversight Committee are moving toward a merger into a Water Quality Oversight Committee to mirror our EPA and consent decree issues. And the committee, the Stormwater Oversight Committee, has asked Charlie Martin to bring a draft mission statement to us. And so Councilmember Blevins, who chairs sanitary sewer oversight, and I will meet with Commissioner Taylor and Charlie Martin in the near future to look at the draft mission statement. And I think our hope is that by the end of this calendar year, we will have a merged oversight committee. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a presentation, which I will let Penny McFadden, who I don't see, there she is, introduce for us.
Well, as you know, our school Waste Buster program is one of our most popular recycling programs that we have, and it's a partnership with Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, Fayette County Schools, and Bluegrass Pride. And today we have some very special guests, and Maxine Rudder from Bluegrass Pride is going to introduce those guests, and they have a very special gift for the mayor and the council.
When we first started talking about doing a school recycling program, we had 2 schools in Fayette County that stepped up immediately and wanted to participate. One of those schools was Maxwell Elementary, and the other was Meadowthorpe Elementary. Today we have with us a teacher, Miles Johnson, art teacher, assistant principal at Meadowthorpe, Susan Hillman, and 3 students, and they would like to present the council and the mayor with recycling bins for your desks, for your papers, your cans, your plastic bottles. So at this time, they would like to make that presentation.
Great. I would just note that about a year ago, Mr. Johnson and folks from Meadowthorpe were kind enough to make a recycling bin available to me. I have been putting it to good use every day since.
Our young recyclers' names are Ella and Rose and Deacon. We also have one for Commissioner Taylor, if she would come forward and get her bin.
Thank you. I would just say, for the benefit of everybody on GTV3, each of these blue bins has been individually decorated and painted by the students at Meadowthorpe. And so we have unique gifts from the folks at Meadowthorpe, and we thank you very, very much for them.
We want to express our gratitude to the mayor and the council for your support of our Waste Buster program. We have one other very special presentation that we would like to make. Each year, the Kentucky Association for Environmental Education gives 3 awards for excellence in environmental education. They give one to an individual, one to a classroom program, and one to an outstanding program. And at this time, I would like to present the mayor and the council with the 2008 Kentucky Association for Environmental Excellence in Education Program Award for the Lexington Waste Buster program.
I believe that takes us down now to council reports. And so if you wish to make a report, if you log in, Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items. The first is that we need to set a confirmation hearing for our Board of Adjustment nominee, and I move that we set that confirmation hearing for October 2nd at 6:15, and then we move it onto that night's docket. So moved.
Is there, I have a motion by Councilmember Gordon and a second by Councilmember Myers. Any discussion?
Just move it on.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
The second item is, I was just thinking over the weekend, we're halfway through September, and the leaves are starting to fall, and I wonder if someone could bring us a presentation, maybe at our next work session, on the leaf pickup for this fall. Is there someone who could do that?
I'm sure we can make that arrangement. I don't see Commissioner Taylor. All right. We'll or Kimmer Cole.
Okay.
Commissioner Cole.
Okay. And then third, I just wanted to, I'm going to kind of hang a T-shirt out here, Mayor. This month, many of you know that we have a Buckle Up Bluegrass going on, and it's in Fayette County as well as the surrounding counties, and we have law enforcement, education, and various partners who are working very hard to raise the level of awareness among these counties for buckling up when people drive. And I'd like to encourage citizens to go on the website, www.buckleupbluegrass.com. One of the things that you can do, along with seeing the Ramel Bradley rap on there, which is very good, is to go through a little education program, and at the end, citizens can register for a free $100 gasoline card. It's a pretty informative website, and we're encouraging teenagers and new drivers also to go on there, as well as folks who are current drivers. So one of the things that will be going on as well as increased seatbelt enforcement is there are going to be seatbelt counts taking place at all the high schools this month and various things like that. So please go on the website, www.buckleupbluegrass.com. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Blevins.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one item. Council members, you may recall last year after the budget process, we kept track of a variety of items that we wanted to improve our budget process with. There's about a list of about 18 items. I think it would be a good time to revisit that list and see how we did after this latest budget cycle. So I would like to move a review of our list of issues and concerns regarding the budget process into the Budget and Finance Committee. So moved.
Any discussion? Those in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
That's all I had, Mayor. Thanks.
Thanks. Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to an inquiry I made of Human Resources earlier today, I received an email from Leslie Jarvis, and by way of introduction here, I just want to read it in part. And she said, attached are a copy of the handouts that will be used in an LFUCG workshop, Staying Union Free. Today is the first day that this workshop has been offered. The format of the workshop and the content is modeled after a course that was offered by the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce titled Remaining Non-Union. I will be teaching the workshop. The idea for the workshop was generated a few months ago when the Division of Human Resources started receiving phone calls from managers concerning questions that the employees were posing. The purpose of the workshop is not to persuade or dissuade our employees one way or the other. It is simply designed to inform managers and supervisors of what they should and should not say when approached with questions by their employees. And the attachment was this document titled Staying Union Free. Now, and indeed, I did not have a lot of time to read through this before our work session today, but I noted that there's a lot of information in it that would be very helpful to both employees and to managers and directors, supervisors in answering employee questions. And indeed, that would conform to the stated purpose, which is neither to persuade or dissuade, but simply to inform. On the other hand, in a document which is entitled "Staying Union Free," I think we're sending clearly a mixed message here. What really are we asking our managers, directors, supervisors to do? So I think this is an issue that we ought to discuss in terms of how we are presenting the question of union participation, how we're responding to our employees when they bring the subject up, what kind of materials we're asking our directors to use as reference. So, with that in mind, I'd like to put this question. I'd like to refer it to the intergovernmental committee to review this document, perhaps to ask some questions of our human resources folk, and so I move to do exactly that, to refer the question of how we respond to employees' inquiries about unionization to the intergovernmental committee. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second to refer that item to the intergovernmental committee. Any discussion? Councilmember James.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to ask Councilmember Blues, excuse me. Do you know how many training sessions will be held from now until the next intergovernmental committee?
I have no idea.
And are you interested in knowing that? Because if, say, the training is only for this month and then it's over, is there a need to stop the training before we evaluate the type of training that it will be?
Let me interject on that. I think that would be appropriate. Mr. Allen, is there any reason why we couldn't hold off on that training until after the intergovernmental committee meeting?
Mayor, we can hold off on it if directed to. All it is to contact the current participants that signed up for it. However, having seen the letter that Councilmember Blues is referring to from the Teamsters, I took a great interest in making personal inquiry as to the feedback from the employees who attended it today, one of which was the past president of the CSEA, who thought it was an absolutely terrific session and full of great general information. But having said that, we'll be glad to postpone if the council would like.
Well, let me just ask you to do that, and we'll dispense with the necessity of any kind of council action unless the council wants to. And I think it may be more a matter of form over substance here, because if the material's good and the title's bad, it may be nothing more than changing the title. But first I heard about this was earlier today, and I share some of the concerns that Councilmember Blues has raised. So let's just hold off on those training sessions pending some feedback from intergovernmental. Anything else? All right. Those in favor of referring that item to the intergovernmental committee, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you for that, Mayor. I've got a couple of announcements. On Thursday, September 18th, two neighborhood association meetings. Spiegel Heights neighborhood will meet at 7:30 p.m. at the Antioch Baptist Church. And at 7 p.m. on the same night, September 18th, the Melrose Oak Park Neighborhood Association will meet at the Thompson Road Baptist Church. And I understand that perhaps a representative from of the consulting team who is working on the master plan for the new or for the recycling center will be in attendance to listen to neighbors' concerns and hear their questions. So I encourage all the Melrose Oak Park folks to come out to that meeting. It can be a very useful communication session. Then, next Monday, September 22nd, 2 neighborhood meetings. The Oakwood Neighborhood Association will meet at 7 p.m. in their community center in the Oakwood Park, and the Radcliffe Marlboro neighborhood will meet at 7 p.m. in the Marlboro Park shelter. Thank you, Mayor. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Stevens.
Mayor, I have a couple things. One is that if anybody's curious about these oranges, I think you had a press conference this morning about them. It's new service from the Lexington Bluegrass Field to the land of oranges down in sunny Florida. And I forget the date that they said they were going to start sometime in November, as I understand.
Early November, November 5th and 6th, if I recall correctly, and it will be serviced to both Orlando and St. Petersburg.
Right. And this will be a low-cost carrier, which the Bluegrass Airport's been attempting to recruit for some time, so they're very pleased with this. And I understand that the fare will be less than $100, maybe $65 or $70, something like that.
My understanding is the initial fare is $69 one way, and that's for a limited time. After that, it'll go up to $89.
That's still cheaper than auto gas.
That's right.
Thank you. The second thing, last week we had a presentation by the Emergency Medical Division at UK and from the Emergency Medical Services about the study which they wanted to share with us, and that study is on status epilepticus, which is a disease, as you know, that can occur not frequently but does occur. And if a person is having a grand mal seizure, after 5 minutes, it's now thought that it can inflict some permanent brain damage. And so the more rapidly you can control that seizure, the better chances the patient has. And what they want to study is the use of medicines which have been used for many years in the pharmacopoeia, which are safe, but they're studying the route of administration. Right now, the instructions in the protocol are to give it IV. But to start an IV in a seizing patient, particularly in a 2-year-old, is very, very difficult. It can be given rectally, but that takes a long time to work. So they would like to try out using Versed as a intramuscular injection. After the presentation last week, there was some confusion about whether we move this on an appropriate way or not. So I was asked to make a motion to prepare a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor on behalf of the Irvine County government to notify the study, an NIH study, that the Irvine County Council approves this study.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Those in favor of Dr. Stevens' motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. This is to do a study on people who can't give their permission, informed consent. The community has to authorize it, and this is one step in that authorization. It's not complete, but it'll be one step. The third thing that I wanted to bring up was the issue of collective bargaining. The contract has been negotiated with the police and is ready for approval. However, contrary to The last time the council heard about this collective bargaining, it was not brought before the council, as some of us who were here remember. And this time, the law department and the mayor have thought it better that the council have an opportunity to review this and before it is approved. So maybe, Logan, you could tell us about your change in policy, and then Michael Allen is going to give us a rundown of what the basic elements in this contract are.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Last week, the mayor was asked to sign a collective bargaining agreement with the police officers and sergeants. The current agreement was adopted in 2005 and had an expiration date of, or termination date of June 30, 2008. It was a 3-year agreement. Back when the legislature changed the law to mandate collective bargaining by urban county government for police and firefighters, the law department rendered an opinion that indicated that based on the language in the statute, council approval was unnecessary. The law was amended in 2006 to provide that corrections personnel were also to be covered by the same act. So prior agreements have not been brought to the council's attention, I think, and I'm not really sure exactly how the council has been made aware of the agreements, but when this agreement was presented first to me and then to the mayor last week, I went back and took a look at this and had an opportunity to discuss it with the mayor and Tim Bennett, and it was my recommendation, and they agreed that the council should approve these agreements and authorize the mayor to sign these agreements. Our law department folks that were involved in these negotiations, at my request, did contact Louisville, because under the consolidated local government statute that was adopted in 2004, and that's what Louisville operates under, the language is virtually the same. Talks about how an agreement becomes effective when it's negotiated in accordance with the terms of the chapter and the mayor signs it. In Louisville, they have the administration and the negotiators negotiate the agreement and then present it to the council for approval. Prior to that statute being enacted in 2004, and Louisville was on its own, Louisville, the city of Louisville, they had collective bargaining then, and we understand that then they followed the same procedure in their collective bargaining agreements. So what we are proposing is that the council review this agreement, which has been submitted to you this afternoon. Michael Allen's going to tell you a little bit more about it this afternoon, and that you consider it and then vote on it at the appropriate time. The FOP, needless to say, has been involved in the negotiation of this agreement and is very interested in seeing this agreement get adopted. And so for that reason, it is being presented to you today to consider putting on the docket for Thursday for first reading. I've sent you a little email to that effect. There will be some more information that will be available to you about the agreement in addition to the agreements. But if you are comfortable moving forward with the second reading on Thursday nights, you may do so. If you're not, then the next meeting would be October the 2nd. Part of the time problem we have here is, as you know, the meetings for this month and the meetings for next month are scheduled a little differently. Here we've got back-to-back meetings in the middle of the month, and next month the regular council meeting is on the 2nd, and I believe it's the 3rd or 4th week of October, if I remember correctly, Mayor. So our hope would be, in an effort just to move this process along, is to at least get it on the docket so you all can consider it at a first reading. If you want to vote second reading on October 2nd, fine. If you feel comfortable with the information you receive between now and Thursday and try to vote on it, suspend the rules and vote on it for second reading on Thursday night, you may do so. But anyway, that's the recommendation about the process and the law department's change in its recommendation from 3 years ago.
Councilmember Crosby, do you have a question?
Yes. How long have you had the signed contract?
Got it last week.
And could we have possibly had it to be able to put on, I guess, first of all, I don't quite understand the change in policy. And then I guess if we're looking at, I understand that there's things in the contract that will be retroactive. I understand that. But there's probably also things in the contract that if we put this off another week or 2 weeks, that will not take into effect. And my concern is that since we're changing the policy halfway through what has been done in the past, we've set a precedent in the past for how we've negotiated these contracts, whether it's police, fire, corrections. All of a sudden, midstream here, we've have a signed contract by one party, and now we're changing how we've done it in the past with not only them but different entities. My fear is that we're changing the process kind of in the middle of what we've done without any notice to the other parties involved, but two, we're also holding off some of the terms of the contract that won't take effect until we do implement the contract. A pay will be retroactive, but there's probably other things in that contract, is my guess, that will not take effect until that contract is signed. Am I correct?
I will let Mr. Allen speak to the details of the contract. I know nothing about that. I just know about the process. I believe that the council has a role in this process, which it has not had before. I understand your concern, and it could be, Councilman Crosby, you would prefer that the mayor just do it without council approval, but I don't know whether that's what the statute contemplates. I don't think it's clear.
And I guess then to take it a step further is we're not part of the negotiation.
That's correct.
Process. So basically, we're just vote up or down.
That's correct.
As to what's already been negotiated.
Similar to what happened with the consent decree or other matters that are brought to you. That's correct, on contracts. We're proposing...
Maybe Mr. Allen can answer at least my question about the technicalities of the contract and whether or not we'd be holding up certain aspects. I mean, best case scenario is that they can get a second reading Thursday night and it can go into effect, but it seems to me like we're changing the process in the middle to what we've already set a precedent of how we negotiate our contracts.
Let me speak.
If I might, Mayor, one thing. We're not setting any precedent with how we're negotiating them. We're setting a precedent or changing the policy with how they're approved.
We're changing the policy of how we're approving of what how we've approved them in the past.
That's correct.
They've already been through this process once, and we've also done corrections, and probably fire's been through it. So we've done several collective bargaining contracts in the past, and
I'm sorry.
And now we're going to change it.
Correct. Not the negotiation.
Not the negotiation, but
how it's approved.
How it's approved.
Right.
And I guess
the administration and the law department are taking the position that, like any other contract which the mayor signs on behalf of the urban county government, that the council should have an opportunity to consider it, approve it, and authorize the mayor to sign it. But as far as the negotiations, there's not any change in how it's negotiated. And Councilman Crosby, there's actually been 6 contracts, 2 police, 2 fire, 2 corrections that have been done so far. So this is the first police contract.
There have been 3 that have been done previously, police, fire, and corrections, and we're starting now the next.
How many have you done? How many has this administration done?
Hang on just one second. There, as I understand, there's a contract for police and sergeants.
That's right.
There's a contract for...
You're right.
Captains and lieutenants. I'm going to defer to the folks that are more familiar with these contracts.
How many contracts has this administration done?
2. Corrections last year, July of last year.
And did we go through this process with corrections?
You did not.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, do you know, can you answer my questions as far as whether or not by us, if we do a first reading Thursday night and then say we don't do another reading until 2 weeks later, whenever our next meeting is, are there things, obviously their pay would be retroactive, but are there things in the contract that can be held up until that contract is signed?
Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Let me speak to a couple of these issues before we go any further. First of all, I think this is a good contract, and as far as I'm concerned, it would be perfectly fine from my point of view to sign it when it came in the door. However, as is the case with most everything that comes across my desk, I asked the Department of Law to review this agreement. And when they did, the question arose, well, what's different about this than any other contract that comes before Urban County government? And after Commissioner Askew looked into it, spoke with Louisville, analyzed the statute, the conclusion was we need council approval. Now, that is a departure from the way it has been done in the past. When we arrived on the scene last year, the policy of the Department of Law was the mayor has the unilateral ability to sign the contracts, and they're effective upon the mayor's signature. Well, with the benefit of hindsight, it would have been good to have had everybody take a hard look at that in the Department of Law and come to an agreement about it, but nonetheless, we went ahead with those two contracts with corrections, just as we had done with the contracts in police and fire previously. Now that this one's come up again, what we're talking about, the difference is between signing it today and signing it conceivably Thursday night if it meets with council's approval and gets 2 readings and a positive vote on Thursday. But that's where we are. That's how we got to where we are. In some respects, I'm arguing against the interests of the office of mayor, because if you look at it in terms of the mayor's responsibility versus the council's responsibility, it would be nice to maintain the old position that has been taken by the Department of Law in the past, and the mayor would just sign it. That's the end of it. But I think the better course of action is, as Commissioner Askew has outlined, and that is that the council have the opportunity to review it and ratify it, and it then be signed. And if that's the case, we're talking about effectively 2 days' worth of difference. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to make one comment in response to something that Commissioner Askew said. I do not think this is like the EPA, because during those negotiations, council members we were part of many, many closed sessions. And to my knowledge, we have not, at least I personally, have not been in any part of any of these negotiations. So I think that it is very different from that, because we were able to give input on the EPA negotiations.
Councilmember DeCamp.
Thank you. It's my recollection, and I'm sure some of the more mature council members can remember this, I hope. But when we started out on this, one of the reasons that I don't think the council was involved, because we weren't involved in the negotiation, because staff from the administrative staff really worked very hard, and they traveled to certain places to learn how and about collective bargaining when it first came in. So they really went through a process of learning how to negotiate professionally with a collective bargaining situation. And I think at that time the council members simply at that point said, these are the people that have studied this more, have gone in, and we haven't opened up this can of worms to the whole council. And so we simply after the negotiations were over, that was it. It was signed by the administration. But one of the things that I think was important is that when this was first passed, that there was an educational process which was followed, and I think that was a very important part of why the administration simply did the negotiations without the approval of the council.
Well, to the degree the council wants to delegate to me the responsibility to negotiate it and sign it on behalf of Irvine County government, I'm perfectly willing to do that. I just don't think we have an ordinance in place at present, as I understand it, to do that. And in the past, my sense is, and the Department of Law can correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense of it is the reading of the statute, the state statute, was that the mayor had the ability under the state statute to sign the agreement, and that was the end of it. After further analysis, I think there's some ambiguity about what exactly the state statute means. If you want to adopt an ordinance delegating that authority to the mayor, suits me fine, I'll sign it now. But in the absence of a clear statute delegating without question the authority to the mayor, then I think a contract of this magnitude is appropriate to have council input on. And if you don't want it, that's fine. I'll be glad to get an ordinance from you delegating to the mayor the responsibility of negotiating and signing the contract on behalf of LFUCG. That's not an issue.
Well, have we ever asked for an opinion from the state on that?
I haven't asked for no, not an attorney general's opinion. No, we haven't. Councilman Myers.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you, Mayor. I would like to add one caveat to what Councilman Member DeCamp said, and that is that it is true that the previous administration had sent folks to travel to learn how to negotiate, but the other caveat would be is that they told us that it was illegal for us to enter into the negotiations and that it had to be done by them. And that's why the council didn't have a part in that. So I just wanted to add that to that discussion. As far as, Mayor, you just talked about us having input. Are you talking about input at this point? Or are you talking about maybe next year moving forward we would have input during the process like we did with the consent decree?
Right now I'm talking about at the current situation.
Okay.
On future agreements, fire corrections and the like, I don't have any problem giving you updates along the way or going into some detail about the negotiations. That did not happen this time around because we've been operating under the assumption the old rules applied. But last week, when I ran it past law for review, the question came up.
Okay. And I agree that you should have the ability to negotiate. It would be nice if we could have the closed sessions where we can be updated as to how things are going.
Councilmember Myers, if I might,
Sure.
Right there. And one of the things Councilmember Gordon just mentioned, the difference in this case and for instance, the consent decree is in the consent decree situation, you had pending litigation. At the end of the day, when it came time for you to vote, you had to vote up or down, which is what you're doing here. As far as how the negotiations would work, if there were periodic updates, it's my understanding that was explored back in 2005, and I don't know all the history of that, but apparently that was a part of what you just said I was not aware of. So I think that's something that we probably need to look into. I know one other councilman earlier this year asked me about updates and things, and so anyway, and something that Councilmember Crosby just mentioned, the correction statute was approved in 2006, and I believe those negotiations started. Just asking Mr. Allen about that. I don't know when in 2007 or whether it was 2006, but they would have been ongoing, and so there are two agreements that were signed last year.
I just have one other question about the document that we were just given. It says 05 to proposed to 08. Mr. Allen? how are we to understand this document? Does this iterate what the 05 contract was and the changes that are made in the 08?
That's the 05 that I was referring to in the document, council member, the 05 contract to the proposed 08 contract. This is draft. This was a draft that I did this afternoon, and obviously maybe should put some added verbiage in there, but it's just a comparison, and what I tried to do was to keep it as simple as possible without getting mired into the detail of minor changes, but just things that would be significant to either the bargaining unit or to LFUCG.
So in order to understand these proposed changes, we'd have to have the previous contract, right?
Which we could easily be made available to you. But what I tried to do is almost, for instance, like an Article 1 recognition, by putting the change in, I'm telling you that the previous contract had that group involved, and now they're not. So that's what I attempted to do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
It might be,
Councilmember Blevins.
Thank you, Mayor.
Wait,
hang
on just a second. I think Councilmember Myers had one follow-up.
I'm sorry, one follow-up. I think Commissioner Askew said that you might be giving us more information about this afternoon. Are you going to do that here today before we vote on this, or closed session, or when is that?
I would be glad to do whatever you'd like me to do, Councilmember.
we had asked him.
I'm referring to what Commissioner Askew said, that you were going to give us more information. Did you have something planned that you were going to go through this
I do not
document,
have
or?
anything planned. This is the only thing that I've done as far as a synopsis.
Okay. Thank you.
We had requested that he run through this document so we'd understand and could ask questions.
All right. If you will do that for us here in just a second, Councilmember Blevins.
I respect and even agree strongly with council oversight on large contracts. I think that's a right thing to do for the community. It keeps a situation where we might not have a competent mayor doing something that we all would perhaps not agree with. So it's always a good thing, I think, on large contracts to have council oversight. I applaud you for doing this because I know you don't have to do it. That said, I was the one that asked earlier this year to be kept in the loop on the negotiations just for this reason, so that when it came to us, there wouldn't be 3 days to make the decision. This makes us effectively a rubber stamp. Even in the cover letter from Commissioner Askew, it says, keep in mind, there's months and months of negotiations, and any change will undo all that work. Well, of course, that puts us in a position where we effectively cannot change this contract, so it's really an up or down vote. That's not a position I really like being in, especially with an implied rush to get it done by Thursday. That's no way to do business. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this in the future if we're going to do it this way, which I like. I would prefer to be involved in the negotiations, at least through closed sessions, so that we have a chance to have real input and not sort of last-minute input. If we're not going to do that, it's fine. I'm glad to let the mayor sign them, but, the contract is then yours and not ours. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Councilmember Lane.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I feel that this is one of the major expenses for the Urban County government. Our public safety is over 50% of our annual general fund budget, and payroll is a substantial part of it. And having said that, I support, I've always supported the public safety effort and adequately compensating our public safety employees. But at the same time, to not have any insight whatsoever into what the agreement is going to be, I think is not a very transparent process, and I don't think it bodes well also for our taxpayers who ultimately will pay the bill. So, I would like to see the council have a vote on it. However, having said that, I don't believe that we should try to micromanage the mayor's office. I think this is the mayor's responsibility to do the negotiation, but I feel that being apprised of the terms and conditions before it's signed, I think is appropriate. And I agree with the Councilmember Blevins. We have a very competent mayor now, and I think basically he's offering to give up part of his power as mayor to the council to ratify the contract. But I do think that it's in the best interest of our community. The other couple of points is that this is a 3-year contract, And, you know, Mayor Newberry may be the mayor 3 years from now, but there's an election between now and then, and, you know, there could be another mayor here, and some of the council members may not be here. So whatever the contract that's done will be binding for 36 months. I think that's another reason that we ought to take a look at it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Stinnett.
Logan, I got one follow-up question for you real quick. What is the KRS say about council input and being a council member being part of the negotiations? Is that a legal thing for us to be able to do? Because we were told 3 years ago that it was not.
I don't think it's addressed in the statute. I think that's the problem, and I think another part of the problem is whether you can discuss it in closed session.
So you're not even sure if we can even do that, as I know Councilmember Blevins alluded to in Lane, that we could be updated.
You all said something about going into closed session to discuss a contract, and I'm not outside of a litigation exception or a matter dealing with specific personnel, which is an exception. You really can't do it, and here you've got a general contract. So I need to go back and talk to the folks that were involved at the time, but I do know that there was some discussion with the council at the time about updates and things like that, and it was decided that there really wasn't any way to do that, and some decision was made just to go ahead and let the mayor negotiate and sign these agreements without council approval. Now, I can get a little more information from Louisville about what they do, but it's my understanding that they negotiate the agreements. The administration negotiates it, have their negotiators involved in it. It gets approved by the unions, and then it comes back and it's presented to the council for consideration.
So I assume since it is presented to council for consideration, if it were disapproved by council, then would that be an indication to go back to the table and rebargain it?
Yeah. Or if it went and it did not pass a union vote, which in this case it did, the membership, if they present it to the membership and it was rejected, and I'm not familiar with all the rules, I assume they'd go right back and everybody'd have to sit around the table again. So,
well, but at the same time, the reason I ask that is even if we disapprove it, the mayor could still sign it and move it on. So in essence, we really don't have an approval or disapproval authority here.
Well, actually, I think it is my opinion that you do. And I think really in order to resolve this issue, we would need the state legislature to provide some clarity in the statutes pertaining to Louisville and to us, which don't mention council approval. They just say the mayor can execute an agreement, but the mayor executes all agreements on council approval. It also says that a publication of the agreement is unnecessary, which other documents you need to have publication. Now, if the legislature meant for the mayor to sign these agreements without any council input and effectively bind the council, I think they could say so. One thing that I think you should consider, it's my understanding in Louisville, I don't know if this is accurate, but I think it's not just public safety that can collectively bargain. CSEA has come to you and approached several folks about perhaps having collective bargaining for municipal employees. Let's assume for a minute that the legislature passed such a law and the same statutory language was used. What would be left for the council to decide in appropriations? Equipment, utilities, all salaries and benefits would be decided entirely by the mayor. And I think in order for the state legislature, which I think they have the authority to do, to tie a legislature's hands that way, a city legislature, I'm not satisfied that they've done it with this statutory scheme.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? Councilmember James.
Mayor, I just would like to add a little bit to what others have said. I agree with most that's been said. I'm concerned about the 2 days before we would be expected to vote on this. If for council members that have not gone through this type of agreement, contract, the language,
it would be entirely up to you when you wanted to approve it.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to do it in 2 days, you can do it on October 2nd, October 23rd, or whenever. The existing contract will stay in place in the meantime.
Yeah. I do agree with what others have said that, it would be an agreement between you and the entity if you decided to sign that. And I do appreciate the opportunity to give input. I just know that we need to give due diligence as a council. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, again, I want everybody to understand, I'm not trying to say you got to vote on it on Tuesday. That's up to you all, or Thursday, rather. This is an issue came up Friday during the course of the contract review. And so here we are. Do we bring it to you today? Do we blue sheet it? Do we forget about it? None of those are particularly attractive options, particularly when I think it is legitimate for the FOP to want to go ahead and get it nailed down. But the issue's come up. And now that it has come up, how do we deal with it? Well, there's no particularly good option, but we wanted to go ahead and bring it to you today so you could be aware of it and deal with it as you see fit. Any further? Vice Mayor Gray.
Just a suggestion. Well, first, I think everyone is sympathetic with the effort that's gone into these negotiations on the part of the administration and part of the FOP, and I think the last thing that any of us want to do, of course, is to be a constraint in moving this forward. And at the same time, we have heard the challenge represented by a lot of us on getting our arms around and doing the, as Councilmember James said, the due diligence that we'd like to feel like is adequate. Perhaps between now and Thursday, if we could have a meeting maybe, and those who want to dig into it a little bit more. I know everybody's busy. We all are. But that might be at least a way to get there. Council.
I might suggest that if we hear Mr. Allen out, he may answer a lot of the questions, and we could schedule a meeting if that's still necessary.
Yeah. Okay, that's good too. All right. Well, Dr. Stevens, I think you and Mr. Allen may have had some conversation about how to proceed at this stage of the game. If not, maybe we can just kind of walk through the synopsis that he prepared.
That's what I would ask him to do, yes.
First of all, the contract is, just for a point of reference, is approximately 51 or 52 articles, and you don't have all the articles here. Anything that was in the existing contract, I didn't put here. So that's why some of the articles are missing. The only articles I've listed are articles that had any kind of significant change. The first thing that I'd like to say is that the basis for our negotiations was the budget that was approved. So council approved a budget for us for this fiscal year, and that was the total dollars that we were working with. So that was the opening, that was the parameters that were established for us to begin with. So council did tell us, you know, kind of like the general ground rules of how much money we had this year to work with. Article 1 is recognition. Minor piece, but it is important. The non-sworn personnel, including trainees and recruits, are now, and if they're until they pass the probationary period, are not including in the bargaining unit. I think the easiest way, Mayor, if it's okay, is just to go through this quickly, and if someone has a question on an article, I'll be glad to elaborate on it. Article 9 is assignments. This is important, was important to the the police management team, that they need to assign officers in temporary positions, and we were able to define the term temporary similar to the way we define it everywhere else in government, as having a beginning date and an ending date. It also expands the chief's ability to determine what are highly sensitive positions, such as public information officer, things that have, you know, are so sensitive that the chief has to be able to appoint those jobs versus opening up for general competition for promotion. Article 10, promotional vacancies. This is an important article. We're making advancement here based upon some ground rules that Chief Beatty established, that he had a goal of getting all lieutenants at least to have a bachelor's degree. And that will now be required in the contract. The only stipulation is there's a small group of sergeants who have 126 hours who will be grandfathered for this next 2008 lieutenant's process. So that's really great news. We're moving to make a more educated department. There was also a minor stipulation in the old contract that the assessment center that we use for promotional process could not be within a 50-mile radius. That was for other reasons, but we were able to eliminate that and still meet the constrictions. The grievance procedure, large piece here. The membership and the administration have agreed that the lodge, which is the union, needs to own the grievance as well. So only the lodge may now file a grievance. Before, anyone in the FOP could grieve an event, and if the lodge didn't support it, that was okay. Then the grievance could just still follow the chain of command. Now the lodge has to support the grievance in the go forward. Conditions of employment. LFUCG has agreed not to use covert electronic surveillance equipment in the investigation of a member. Member is used as a bargaining unit member, with the exception, obviously, of any kind of formal administrative complaint or a criminal investigation. This was important to the FOP. Article 14, health and safety. This is also was an important consideration for the FOP, that tasers will be issued to members assigned to a uniform position whose primary job description is in an enforcement capacity. So tasers are now part of the standard uniform issue. Article 18, military leaves. This was more administrative and required. It's just bringing things, the military leave up to statute, which requires 21 days now paid, and the ability to carry over any unused leave for a 2-year period. Article 19, legal protection. LFUCG expanded the legal coverage to the members. It was almost by exception in the previous contract not listed as far as punitive damages, and now potential punitive damages against the member on a tort action, and now they will be covered if it's within the scope of employment, obviously. Article 20, court pay. This expands the 2-hour court pay to the members that are required to personally meet. Previous contract was just if you had to go to court, but a lot of our officers spend a lot of time doing work with attorneys as a result of a case. So we've expanded the court pay to include pay for members that are required to personally meet with attorneys or perform work directed by an attorney outside of regularly scheduled work hours if it's a duty-related matter. So that was it. Paid and unpaid leaves. There are no changes to the holiday schedule, though it was requested, and no change to the accrual rates. Yes, sir.
If I could interrupt for just a minute, I think Councilmember Beard wants to make a motion here.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Allen, but going through this process without the ability to have a dialogue back and forth and discuss things in any kind of depth really doesn't help me anyway. I would like to move that we move this whole question to the October 2nd council meeting docket.
Let me see if I understand the motion. Do you want to move it there for a vote, or
for a vote? Yes.
So we would get a first reading Thursday and then second reading on the 2nd for a vote.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Have a motion and second that we place this item on the docket for first reading on the 18th and second reading.
I want to clarify before the second. You want to put what on the docket?
the approval or rejection, I'm voting up and down.
Of the agreement.
Of the agreement,
Yes, okay, then I do second.
And that's for first reading for October 2nd?
No, last reading on October 2nd, and no suspension of the rules Thursday night.
We even put it on for first reading.
The motion is to add this, well, let's see. We have a motion on the floor right now from Dr. Stevens, as I recall, to place this item on the docket, correct?
I started to make that motion, yes.
All right.
I'm not sure that I completed it.
All right,
because
well,
we
we've got
decided
one.
to wait.
We'll say,
But I think he's making the same motion, except he's, I'm not sure that if.
I just want to be sure everybody's got some time to at least look through this and do some investigation. This is a good roadmap to go to the article that we might want to look at, but
I agree, but I don't know if you can make a motion today to not do a second reading on Thursday if the 10 people on the council want to do it.
That's true.
All right. I think then what we have here is a motion to go ahead and put it on the docket for first reading on the 18th, with the expectation at least that for the moment it would have a second reading on the 2nd. Any discussion of that motion? All in favor then of placing that item on the docket, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Okay. No. Motion carries. Dr. Stevens, I think you still have the floor for a council report. Yeah.
I am through.
All right. Councilmember Crosby.
I understand that.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess sticking with our public safety, I just want to thank Chief Hendricks and Assistant Chief Fowler and Commander Barnard of the East Sector. Last Thursday on 9/11, I had the opportunity to go out with some students from the Lexington Christian Academy, the East Campus location. The students for, I guess, about 2 or 3 weeks had been collecting candy bars to present to our firefighters and police officers, and they all wrote little handwritten thank yous to them for their service that they provide our community. And so it was a very special day to be able to go present gift baskets. We went to several fire stations and, like I mentioned, to the East Sector and presented these during roll call. So that was a very special thing to take part of. I also want to announce on September 29th, the East Lake Neighborhood Association will be having their meeting at the Eagle Creek Library, and that'll be at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to make a report? All right. We'll move on to the mayor's report. I have 3 or 4 short items. One, several of you attended the Destination 2040 meeting that was held last Thursday, and I thank you for taking the time to do that. If you have any further questions, feel free to let Charlie Boland or me know, and we'll be glad to push that along. Second, I don't see Mary Ann Blodgett here right at the moment, but I would tell you that we're planning on having our second neighborhood summit on October 25th in the morning, probably starting 8:30 or 9 o'clock. We'll let you know the exact time as we get closer, but if you would help communicate that to the neighborhood associations, we'll be sending out a notice shortly, but I wanted you to be aware so you can put that on your calendar. Also, if Commissioner Bennett could step to the microphone for just a moment. You may recall before the break I mentioned the fact that we had had some discussions with the school system about the use of the property at the federal prison property located on Leestown Road. The school system has now firmed up their plans just a little bit, and I'd like for Commissioner Bennett to bring you up to speed on that with the help of some folks from the school system.
As you may recall, back in 2006, you authorized the government to apply for what at that point was to be some surplus federal prison property, roughly a 40-acre tract, which at that time was envisioned to be a site for a new fire station as well as a new fire training center. Along the way, Fayette County Public Schools also submitted an application for the same property. We were asked by GSA, the General Services Administration, federal government, to work cooperatively with Fayette County Public Schools to come up with a mutual use for the property rather than having basically competing mutual exclusive uses. We've attempted to do that, and at this point, where we are, Fayette County Public Schools is proposing to locate an agri-science program on the property. We are proposing to modify our application to apply for a 10-acre portion of that property for location of a new fire station. We have with us today Carrie Davis and Joe Norman from Fayette County Public Schools to give you some more information on the agri-science program that they propose to locate out there, and then I'll follow up and try to answer some questions you may have as far as the Urban County government's proposed use of the property.
Thank you for having us. Fayette County Public Schools looking to expand the agricultural program at Eastside Technical Center. Currently, with the facilities we have, we're not able to expand the program in the way that the students need. We're looking at an equine program, veterinarian science, large and small animal part of that program. Also, in the future, plant and land science, environmental science, extension of that program. And Ms. Davis is our agriculture instructor. I'll let her talk to you more about the programs themselves. But it's a tremendous opportunity for the students in Fayette County, being the agriculture industry that the bluegrass region really is, especially in the equine industry. We have tremendous support from the equine industry, the State Department of Agriculture, State Department of Education, also, and the community support in this. I'll let Ms. Davis talk to you some about the program offerings and what we'll be doing.
What we have now is a very strong horticulture program in place, built by the former ag teacher. But what we have in Fayette County is our students are vastly underserved in any areas of animal science education, so we've incorporated that into our curriculum. And we sent out a survey to roughly 903 kids exactly in our system in the high schools, and we found that over 10% of them were extremely interested in coming to pursue equine science studies, and another 10% were extremely interested in coming to pursue small animal studies. So we know that the interest is there, and we have started to increase our curriculum to incorporate those interests in veterinary science. And with this property, we can put those practices, we can put that curriculum into practice, give the kids the hands-on experience and skills they need to get these jobs. They're sitting here in the middle of the horse capital of the world, but there's like a disconnect between how do they get from where I am on any street to this industry, and also the small animal industry as well. We will keep the plant and land sciences because that's very important to horticulture, especially in our urban area between landscaping and floriculture. And our sustainable agriculture movement, which is ever increasing in popularity, can be applied there. Environmental science is a major component. And further down the line, we have our ag biotechnology, food science, and ag mechanics curriculum to implement. We have strong community support from a lot of people that are willing to work with our kids and help them get where they need to be.
Does anybody on the council have any questions about the program that's contemplated there? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome. And I appreciate your thinking about this, especially here in the horse capital of the world. I'm interested because this is, and I've spoken at length with Mary Browning.
Yes.
Is her new name right?
Yes.
Okay. I've spoken at length with her about this. As you know, this piece of property is in the rural service area and there are no sewers. And so I'm particularly interested in what exact facilities you intend to build out there. Can you give us some detail on that? I realize that you may not be to the point where you have designs, but I would like to know what you intend in that regard.
There'll be stables for board horses and another barn for large and small animals. Also, there'll be classrooms for the students to gain instruction with.
So how big will the school be, the classroom building?
The plans right now are to be able to serve 200 to 250 students.
And believe me, we have a strong desire to protect the land, the soil and water there, and that's like a major part of our curriculum as well. So it goes hand in hand. And the architects that we've had that have looked and drawn up our plans are green oriented, and they are using the land to this advantage, not to try to reshape the land to match what we need. So with the wastewater, a lot of gray water runoff, leach beds and things that we can use to make it, I guess, less invasive and to also protect and serve our needs.
Do you, in thinking about the future, do you have, what are your thoughts on expansion? And if there's a need for more classrooms, have you thought out 20, 30 years down the road, or?
But you'd have to refer that to Mary Browning on that, but we've thought about, potential growth and things, but with that, yes.
So there would be the possibility of expansion?
I don't believe there will be a large amount of expansion. Like I said, we're looking at servicing 200 to 250 students at that site, and with the staff that we'll need to do that and be able to use the rest of the farm as farmland to teach and keep it as green as possible. That's what our intentions are.
I think that's a really good, positive thing. So have you had conversations about it? Will it be on septic tank then, the facility, since there's no sewers?
That's not.
Oh, you're not, you're the program folks.
Right.
I think they had mentioned startup of some septic tanks, and then if it got so big, force pumping, or there were several terms I didn't understand.
That's okay.
To match up with this, yeah.
That's okay. I think probably another conversation with Mary and maybe our sewer folks, because there aren't sewers there.
I know the plans, what they're looking at is to be environmentally sensitive, and we want to do that too, because that will enhance the agriculture program and what we're trying to instruct with our students to be environmentally friendly.
And we hope they'll stay in Fayette County after they have this training and education. So that would be good. Well, I appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Beard.
Thank you, Mayor. This sounds like a great program. It really does. And we're always looking backwards a little bit to see how we can maybe take ourselves into a different world than we have right now. And agriculture, the importance of agriculture, just and the horse industry too, for that matter. But just basic agriculture is something we're seeing mentioned, whether it be fuels and ethanol or whatever. I'd like to ask Commissioner Bennett, though, why are we being approached? Is there a process as relates to the request for the land? And
there is. We have had ongoing and recent conversations with both FEMA, which is the fire department's federal sponsoring agency, U.S. Department of Education, which is Fayette County Public Schools sponsoring agency, and GSA, which is the agency that ultimately will deed the property. We have tentative approval from all three of those agencies for this plan. The only thing we need to do on our end to make all the paperwork match up is to amend the application that we sent in 2006 from the 40-acre original request to our current 10-acre request. And we'll need the council's approval to do that.
So we're not passing on the 30 acres to Fayette County Public Schools, and they have to go through a process themselves, or?
They're going through a parallel process that we are. Those 30 acres will ultimately go to Fayette County Public Schools.
We have to release those acres.
In essence, yes.
I wonder if the Fayette County Public Schools would be at all interested in some type of a swap with Meadowbrook Golf Course.
I couldn't speak on their behalf.
I understand you probably couldn't, but I wanted to say it in front of my colleagues and for the television. Thank you.
Any more questions?
If there are no more questions, and if you're comfortable with the project, I would ask that you move to put on the docket for Thursday night the authorization to amend the application from 40 acres to 10 acres. The law department has the application ready. We can distribute it to you if you like between now and Thursday, but I would request that you do that. GSA is kind of anxious to get the property transferred and out of federal control, so they've asked us to move as expeditiously as we can.
Is there a motion? Second. Have a motion by Councilmember Stinnett, second by Vice Mayor Gray, to add that item to the docket for Thursday evening. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
I see Ms. Blodgett has come in. If you could step to the podium for just a minute and talk briefly about the neighborhood summit so that those involved with neighborhood associations would be aware of the events on October 25th.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm sorry I was out of the room at that moment that I was called. I apologize. Many Neighborhoods, One Lexington. That's the name of or the theme of our Neighborhood Summit. It was last year. We held it on October the 6th, I believe. And this year we decided we were looking for a Saturday, which, as you all well know, is not easy here in Lexington. There's so many wonderful events going on. Ours is, the summit is in the morning from about 8 a.m. till 1. And we'll have it right here in the Government Center. Our goal is to have a very good meeting and try to do it in a very fiscally responsible way. And so we invite all of the neighborhood leaders and anyone interested to come and join us on October the 25th, Saturday morning. And of course, you all as leaders of the community, we'd love to have you all be a part of it. Lori Henry in your office is my teammate on this project, so she'll keep you well informed along those lines. And we hope that in your neighborhood meetings in the next month or 6 weeks or so that you will mention this and invite those folks to come and join us. We're working on the program now. I sent an email out to all the commissioners and division directors asking for their ideas just last week and received some good ideas. Certainly would like your ideas and any ideas from the neighborhoods. Certainly, if there's something that they are interested in knowing that perhaps we could provide for them, we want to do that. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll be sending information out soon. So thank you. Looking forward to it.
Do you have a definite start time?
Well, last year we had registration starting around 8. We have coffee and kind of a mingle time. So the first session usually is around 8:45. We'll probably follow along those lines. We'll have an open session, a general session rather, and then move into panels. The main criticism we got last year was that we had so many good sessions that folks couldn't get to them all because we had they were running concurrently within 2 hours. We'll try to fit 3 in this year if we can, because that was the only criticism we got that I could see, was that they wanted to go to all of the sessions and we just simply didn't have time.
Thank you. Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly appreciate the efforts you all put together last year in hosting the summit. But some of the feedback we got back, and I hate to be I don't want to put any damper on this one. October 25th is a great date and all, but being the fall, have we looked at doing anything in the spring? Because a lot of the feedback we got back was, that's a busy time of year. We can't always come down there. What about January, February, when neighborhoods are usually quieter, things aren't as hopping in that time of year? Have we looked at that? Or if we're going to continue with the 25th, which is fine, what about doing a second one maybe in March? Because I think the main issues are, with the code enforcement and things like that, as they gear up, it could be more beneficial or as beneficial.
Yeah. Well, it's open to discussion, certainly. I think almost any time you pick is going to be difficult. I don't know. I know you all try to do events, and we have basketball in the winter, and and weather and all kinds of things, but certainly it doesn't matter. I don't think it's a real huge issue, but so many things start gearing up for the fall, I think, and that's kind of why we were doing it then, so.
Well, we can certainly sample the folks who are there, and if you all would continue to get some feedback from your neighborhoods and let us know, because there's no rule that says we can only do this one time a year.
Absolutely.
Thanks for raising it.
Okay.
Anything further on that? Okay, the last thing I would mention is I think we have circulated to you a list of board and commission appointments that are coming up in the next quarter, and I just encourage you to pass along recommendations you might have on that front. That brings us down now to public comment on issues not on the agenda. Does anyone wish to address the council? I have two people who have signed up, Preston Penley and Eric Moore. So, Mr. Penley, you signed up first. We'll, pardon me? Okay. So, Mr. Penley, you'll have your 3 minutes as well as Mr. Moor's 3 minutes. And if you would give us your address, we'll be underway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments are on the second reading of the resolution for the development plan for Phoenix Park and the old courthouse. My name is Preston Penley. I'm a downtown resident, and I urge each of you to vote no on Thursday on the resolution for a development plan for Phoenix Park and the old courthouse. I have attended 2 TIF delegation meetings and as well as the September 9th work session. I echo many of the sentiments that I've heard from those who voted no on September 9th, including Mr. Blues, Mr. Gray, Mr. Blevins, and Ms. Gorton. Several of the discussed projects have worthy objectives. The streetscape was first talked about publicly, as I recall, after Lexington was awarded the equestrian games. The old courthouse is a beautiful historic landmark that deserves commitment and support, and I personally am a great supporter of the farmers market. A vibrant farmers market is a fantastic downtown event weekly throughout the year. All that I've learned about TIF districts leads me to the understanding that TIFs are not simply about public improvements. They support and enhance the private sector through public improvements when local funds are not available. While Lexington will not explicitly enter into a contract with the web company, I will not be convinced that CenterPoint is not involved. Can we seriously be expected to believe that CenterPoint is not involved in a pedway from a web-owned parking garage to the CenterPoint block? On September 9th, Councilman Myers reemphasized how unrelated were the TIF district and CenterPoint. Minutes later, he asked Mr. Turner if the Webbs would pay the processing and review fees for the TIF application. The process seems to be disjointed. 3 of the endorsements on September 9th came from council members Myers, Crosby, and McCord. Mr. Myers and Ms. Crosby think that nothing can be lost from moving forward, and individual items on the list can be removed at any time. Mr. McCord said that our city is one of missed opportunities and we should focus on success and not failure. First, as an endorsement, we have nothing to lose, so why not is incredibly weak. If state legislators ask what separates this TIF application from others and what makes it special, those comments reveal just how unspectacular this application will be. The incremental value may originate from Lexington, but the Commonwealth will make the decision. If I spoke to my representative, I would say not to support this application. If it moves forward, it is not well positioned to be approved. Those legislators and staffers will evaluate the application conceptually and determine what tax revenues the entire plan will support. Yet council members continue to talk about these individual a la carte project pieces, revealing that for them this is a wish list whose only common thread is proximity to a demolished block. This concept stands on weak footing. I'm saying that there's much to lose by moving forward. We're losing time by extending this process. This development plan sprang up only after the CenterPoint development was announced. Lexington does not have a review process for developing TIFs, nor have we properly planned how to take full advantage of tax increment financing. If this ordinance were voted down on Thursday, the council could put its heartfelt energy, intelligence, and resources on developing a system that best positions Lexington for a better opportunity. We can also lose face and leverage with the state if we submit this plan to the Commonwealth. As Councilmember Blevins said, this is not even a TIF application. If it is surgically rejected, what type of footing does that leave the city for the next application? I agree with council members who said we are in favor of TIF projects and pursuing opportunities. This, however, is not the one to pursue. Mr. McCord is not here. If he were, I'd be able to tell him that I'm not focusing on failure instead of success. The Webbs have said that CenterPoint will go on. As for the public improvements, all of these worthy projects can be funded locally if justified. I simply don't believe this slate of projects is worthy of a TIF application. Last week and leading into this week, the design for the streetscape improvements was given the green light and funding was discussed. That process is moving forward. Lexington has not had a TIF. That funding is not waiting in trust for us to claim it. There are 1,000 ways that money could be used by the state. The burden is on us to prove the necessity of the project and the funding. Is this really the marquee project that will change the face of Lexington? With buried utilities, heating, air conditioning, and ventilation for the museum, a tiny space for a farmer's market that would conflict with public events that now occur at Cheapside Park, Pedways. I want Lexington's first TIF project to be grander than that. I think the state will require something grander than that. Lexington won't be fundamentally changed by a linear park separating the county attorney from whatever coffee or sandwich place lands on the first floor of CenterPoint. I want something spectacular. I want an entertainment district that I can walk or bike to that improves on the one that we lost downtown. I want a TIF that helps expand and create a whole new destination and dimension for downtown Lexington. That's a concept I can support. That would take a risk and think big and thinking about success and not failure.
You have about 20 seconds, Mr. Penley.
Thank you, sir. I think that project opportunity is at your doorstep in the form of a distillery district. I know it's not a one versus the other, but I think more energy into one and voting no on Thursday is the way to proceed on Thursday for the resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Seeing none, we're ready to consider closed session matter. Councilmember Henson.
Mayor, I have a motion. I move that we go into closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810 1B and G in order to discuss an economic development matter involving real property. An open discussion would likely affect the value of a specific piece of property to be acquired for public use and would jeopardize the siting, retention, expansion, and upgrading of a business. So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Those in favor?